The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame. Well, welcome back to The Short Game, a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I am your host, Shane Kelly, and I am joined by two amazing co-hosts, but not my brother this time around. We have with us Nate Heininger.
Hello, Shane.
Hi, Nate. And the wonderful Laura Nash.
Hello.
And today we are going to be discussing a game that I'm really, honestly, excited a lot for just to get a chance to talk about this with you guys, because I feel like there's a lot to say here. We're talking about the Pathless, an amazing new game from the Giant Squid company, the same group that brought you Abzu, which we absolutely loved not so long ago, or maybe it's been a few years, and published by Annapurna Interactive. This game is a new... Well, how would you describe it?
So, Pathless is a game that if you watch a lot of indie showcases, that the trailer's been everywhere, I feel like. If you are trying to place it, it's the one with the girl in red and the eagle running and shooting arrows. It's available on Windows, Mac OS. It's on Apple Arcade, so you might own it already if you're an Apple Arcade subscriber. But it's a little bit... It requires some decent hardware, I'll say that. Mm-hmm. You can also get it on PlayStation 4 or 5, but it just came out in November. And the Pathless has been a really interesting one because it's like, it feels kind of like Forest Abzu in the trailer.
Yeah. And if you remember Abzu is a game where, like these games kind of in its lineage, because the company Giant Squid was a breakaway from that game company who created Journey and Flower and, all the way back in the day Flow. And basically they've been the developers of beautiful games that kind of lean much more into style and experience than they do lean into like really hard-hitting gameplay. And so there's some interesting things that are evolutions here and places where it comes a little closer to maybe other things in the games industry, but there's still a lot of neat innovations. But let's start by just talking about what is happening in the Pathless. Why is there no path, perhaps? So this one is a adventure game taking place on an island where a hunter, dressed all in red, just as you mentioned, Laura, is kind of washing ashore on an island where I think they say something along the lines of, the world of the gods and the world of men is close or touches, something like that. And you're going to try to dispel a curse that has been placed on these, 5 different gods? And as you do so, you're going to encounter the God Slayer who has slain or cursed these gods, and the experience of playing the game is all centered around, I would say, 2 big things. One, the hunter is an archer, and there's this really excellent archery / traversal mechanic that I can't wait to discuss. And then the second thing that is the other pillar of the gameplay is all based around your eagle companion, who helps you hunt these kind of corrupted spirits or gods. It's a really interesting take on an open world game. The thing that is the biggest divergence from all of those previous games I mentioned in its lineage going back to that game company and Giant Squid is that this game plays like an open world game. Those other games are very linear. Abzu has a very clear path that you follow. And I think the idea right there in the name, right up front, is that this is a game that is going to be pathless. It is going to be an open world experience, similar to those in the tone, I guess, but very different in terms of how you explore it.
Yeah. Well, and it's been a while since I've played Abzu or Journey, but this game also just has straight up classic puzzles, right? Like Zelda style puzzles. And I don't remember any of that happening definitely not in Journey. But this has like road blocking puzzles that you need to solve in order to continue through the game, which is, I think, a welcome addition to this sort of this sort of game.
I mean, honestly, you start off in a very safe place if you've played any games by this group before, because you show up on a shore, it looks gorgeous. There's this really large architecture, elaborate architecture. Something I love about the series, like Abzu and Journey, is you see a big thing and you can climb it, which is not true about 90% of games. Like if there's a building, you can probably go on top of it in this game. And that's just a good promise to always have. But to me, the big difference is at times I felt like Journey and Abzu was a game about pacing. You go into a room, everything slows down because there's a current in Abzu, or you get to go really fast because you've got a wind in Journey, and it completely controlled the pace. In this game, the mechanic is you're an archer and you hit these little rhombuses, diamonds, that's the word
targets,
that
crystals.
Normal people use, these little crystals. You shoot that and you get a boost of energy. The coolest thing you get to do in this game is you can run, shoot, and you kind of like slide on your feet, shoot, and you get to go much faster and just zoom across places.
Yeah.
Or you can fly with your eagle. So this is a game that is like all about your movement. Are you going to go super fast and, very smoothly glide around, almost like I would say a snowboarder or something? Or are you going to take the slow route through with your eagle gliding around? It feels like that is the reason this game exists.
Yeah, I love that. 2 quick points. So one, similar to games like Journey and Abzu, this game starts out with a ton of what felt to me incomprehensible cutscenes where it's like, all right,
meaningless. I don't care. I never care about them. Cleanse the world from evil. Sure. Done.
Yeah, I know there's something going on, and I'm certain that the creators of the game can explain everything. But when you're watching it, it just so much happens so fast, and it's so large and dramatic that like, well, I assume at some point I'll understand how all that, like what all that meant. But secondly, your point, which assume incorrectly.
How many games could basically open with name of character? In this case, the Last Hunter makes the journey to reclaim the light that has been stolen from the world.
Please stop the bad things. There are 3 pillars to stop the bad thing, and then there are 5 pillars to stop.
Hey player, hey player, save the world. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
on it.
Save the world.
Let's go.
Change the world from red, which is mean, to green, which is nice.
Which is nice. Make it very nice. Also, the traversal mechanic that you talked about, Laura, I love a game that like right out of the gates is gonna be like, here's a fun thing. Here's the fun thing of this game, and you're able to do it within the first like 3 minutes of playing the game. And I love that, like it was almost like a wow moment for me, being like, oh, this is awesome, and it is fun the whole time. Which I also don't think you get that, like you said in the other games. Like there is interesting traversal, but I rarely found it like, like wee, what you kind of get in this game.
So you talk about that opening moment. So you learn you can move, and then you kind of look around at the world and you see the little diamonds placed as these little trail drops of, it's like cookie crumbs going off the distance. You're like, oh, I can go there, 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 and there. Even though it's kind of fake on the first tutorial island, you really can feel like you can go anywhere. And that's the first time I was like, this is what they think is different.
Yeah. The movement, and to give as good an explanation of it as I can, because I want to talk about what makes it fun and what makes it unique, is when you walk in this game, you walk just absurdly slow, and it's actually kind of torturous to be walking as slow as you walk without having the meter charged up that you charge with these targets. At any place in the world that you see these targets that you can shoot, the aiming is perfect and locks on immediately, which I think is key here, because this is not a game that's trying to be a intense shooting gallery. This is a game about momentum. So when you shoot these targets, the crystals, they charge up a meter that you have. And when you have that meter full, you can hold a run button and then you can run. But on top of that, when you shoot the target, your arrow will go out to it, but the energy is coming back to you from that target. And right when that energy reaches you, you get a little extra boost of speed. And the most fun thing about this mechanic is being able to really play with that little extra boost of speed, because it's very timing dependent. If you let that catch you while you're maybe jumping through the air, it maybe triples the length of your jump. Or if you are firing this off while dashing across a field, you'll move that much more quickly. You'll move that extra you get that extra burst of speed. And then combine that with the eagle. A lot of the games that are in this lineage, especially if you look back at Journey, are about they're increasing the number of increasing the amount of like verticality that you can add, and the amount of speed that you can add to your character over the course of the game, and then playing with giving that to you and taking it away as a way of empowering and disempowering the character in a way to give kind of an arc to the game. It's the discovery that I think they made with Journey, and now every game that really wants to kind of play in this kind of emotional space, like where it's all about like a journey or a traversal of this big space. A lot of games are playing with. I think it's the exact same thing we saw in A Short Hike, right?
Yep, there literally are get little cubes that turn into feathers, which make you jump higher. And I wrote down in our outline, short hike feathers. You earn short hike feathers.
Yeah, you earn short hike feathers, that let you flap. Let your bird flap an extra time, which leads to one of the worst examples of what I think is maybe wrong with this game, which is the fact that it has any text in it at all.
Why is there?
And there's a moment in this game where you see this text on screen. Press X to perform a super flap, which will consume a large number of flaps.
It's specific, you need those flaps. Don't consume too many of those flaps.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this game should have tried to hew a little closer to Abzu and Journey and the games that I think it descends from. It needs less explanation than even we are giving it here on this podcast, and much less explanation than it gives itself.
I mean, I'm a completionist in the terms, like, I like talking to the little NPCs, and there's a lot of dead bodies running this beautiful world that you can go talk to the skeletons. And I would always, there was a little orb around them saying I could go talk to them. I went and talked to the skeletons, and they never said anything interesting at all.
Yeah.
And Breath of the Wild style, I cleansed a tower, and it, went from mean old infected tower to a beautiful pure tower of light. And I went and talked to my boy, the dead body on the tower, because I assumed I had cleansed it and he was going to say something different. And then he just told me the same thing, and I was like, oh. So don't get excited about the writing. Every
single NPC says something along the lines of, oh no, the Godslayer is about to kill me.
No, he didn't even say that. He was just like, famine has come to our land.
Yeah. The bodies are so funny too, because they'll be placed in situations where it's like, oh, I guess it's supposed to mean that one of the previous hunters failed this traversal challenge, but some of them are in just really low stakes things. Really early in the game, there's a spot where you just go and you press a button, you grab onto a rope, and it pulls you up. You're not even doing anything. You're just going over and pressing E or whatever, and it pulls you up to the platform. There was no challenge to it, but at the bottom of it is a dead body. So it's like, man, one of these great hunters that had failed before just, I guess, slipped while holding onto the rope or something and died. Not even a dramatic, not even a cathartic death. They just fell holding onto a rope.
And let me say, though, the number of dead bodies in this game is trying to present a seamless experience where you cannot die, where like you get a setback, you literally fall out of places, you might get temporarily infected, you might get sick, like the screen might turn red, but you're never going to die in this game. They really want it to feel like a continuous experience. I honestly really respect that. Like I did really poorly on my first boss fight because my hands were tired and there's a lot of vibration. The fact that they would just like knock me out a window to slowly run back up with no power-ups anymore as my punishment felt so much better than if it had been like press A to reset. So
yeah,
sometimes like this seamlessness works in its favor, other times it does not, because when it tries to be like other games and give me dead bodies to investigate, I'm like, why did you do this? If I had just pressed a button and the dead body spirit was released to heaven, I would have pressed every dead body in the entire game. But the fact that I got dialogue made me be like, oh, do I really want to go talk to that guy? I guess there's an achievement.
A couple things that I really enjoy, the just the arrow mechanic, if that makes sense. Like Shane already set up, there is no, it's not a skill based thing. You just hold trigger or click to fire an arrow and it auto aims and everything. Though if you don't hold it long enough, you'll likely miss your target. It's like a power up. But I just love like the sound and the look of the arrows flying is fantastic. And there was a while when I first started playing, I was just like firing arrows off in the distance and it just felt good. I've always been a fan of like archery games. And while there's no archery, like you're not doing like power and angle or anything like that in this game, it still just felt good to, let loose a bunch of arrows. And then two, I love how they, the mechanic you're talking about, Shane, with the boost of speed. They do really fun things where there's like a jump that you would never be able to make, but there are 3 of those crystals in the middle of it, and you have to daisy chain you jump, shoot an arrow, it bounces you up, then you shoot another one and it bounces you up, and you can kind of chain together your jump and jump super long distances. And it's not like, at least early on, it's not particularly challenging, but it is very satisfying when you pull it off.
I love the combination of that with your bird, because you get, once you get past Tutorial Island and you get your bird, you can press X to glide. Again, very Breath of the Wild. But the trick is, though, when you have your bird and you want to shoot, you'd like temporarily drop and you can shoot, but like you lose a tiny bit of drop, but then you get a boost. So it's a really fun risk reward mechanic because it does take a little time to aim. So it just adds this extra layer where you can solve puzzles multiple ways. Like you could try to daisy chain, or you could try to glide and shoot just one if you're bad. Like I don't think a lot of games that feel as designed for like an archery traversal mechanic would build in this like safety net of the bird. Like it just feels like almost like a kid's or an I'm tired track, because you can still solve the puzzles slowly by gliding, or you can do it. Man, I cannot wait for people to speedrun this game. It's going to look incredible.
So the speed running in this game is going to be really cool, because they're going to probably have all these ways to do those big chained out leaps without having any of the upgrades, which the little none of the short hike feathers like we were talking about. So I'm very excited to see that, if I can ever see this game speed run.
This also feels like a game where speedruns are going to turn into like finding that weird nook in that mountain that like you slot through and you fall into like 3 levels below you and you win the game in 3 minutes. Like that has to be in this game.
Yeah, I do feel like there's going to be a million categories. Like get all of the feathers, get all of the, like solve all of the puzzles,
Yeah.
No flying. I don't know.
I'm thinking, because of the way all of this game works, it's going to be a very fast speed run, because this is maybe the first under 10-hour open world Zelda style game that we've found for this show. I mean, at least in the Breath of the Wild era and kind of mold. This game took me about 5 or 6 hours to finish. There's a huge amount of optional content, and the thing I really like when they do this is it's really forgiving with these puzzles. I actually quite liked the puzzles, and in every area you had to complete, I want to say, about 6 of them. and that's out of maybe like 10 or so. So if you had some of the one puzzle that seemed like it was going to be annoying because you were going to have to drag a bunch of blocks around or something, you didn't have to focus on that. You could do only the ones that you found quickly, or so you're never doing that thing that happens in games like this where you're scrounging around and looking for like the last shrine or whatever that you haven't
the
spotted
one
in
key,
region.
a small key somewhere.
Also, a thing that speeds it up is you basically have this like press triangle for X-ray vision button that's like turns the world into a heat map where things that you haven't done yet are red.
It's so helpful. I wish every open world, especially open world puzzle games like this, had some sort of button like this where you're just like, okay, I love open world as much as the next person does, but sometimes I kind of want something to just tell me a direction to go in, and this game has that, and I really, really appreciated it.
I mean, there's nothing else to do in this game. Like, you're not cooking, you're not building resources,
right?
You're not like trying to get an upgrade on your knife. Like, you're just solving the puzzle.
Where do I go next? I need to. I know.
Thing.
While we're talking about that spirit mask vision thing that you have, it's used in a few different ways, but I think the impetus for that and the biggest reason for that is they designed this game very intentionally to have no map, no mini map, no menu that you can pull up with a map, and so the equivalent to that is that spirit mask. So when you put that on, it will highlight things that you still have left to do, things that are still cursed, kind of on the horizon, and you can see some of those things like the towers through walls and things like that. But then they really have figured out a lot of little clever ways to make it work in different ways. There are things that are illusions, and you can only like maybe walls that you can walk through if you put the mask on, and it's used in some of the puzzles. So I thought that was really effective. I kind of still would like to have had a map, even if it doesn't show me where I am on it, even if it was just in a menu, or even if it was just, maybe a few times during the game, show me the island from very high in the air. That led to this very interesting, very different, like kind of lack of sense of place.
Scale.
Yeah, sense of scale.
One of the first, when you get past that first like small island and you go to the mainland, you are in a temple that has a map of the new island on it. And
I should have took a screenshot.
I took a screenshot too. It's man-made. You can walk around it. There's a floating island above you that in the world that they've created with like a ceiling, almost like a column that's been cut off and made into it's gorgeous. I loved this man-made map, and I kind of was like, oh cool, they've got this map that like I can't find a physical map on my digital thing, but I'll be able to get back to this room. And then I like flew out, and it was like, oh nope, that's on another island. I'm never gonna be able to make it back.
Yeah, you would think for a game that is so bird centric, there would be some sort of like top down view you get at some point. Let me send my bird up and let me see through its eyes or something. Let me see like down onto the overall map. I didn't really think about that while playing, but I agree completely. Like, it's definitely a choice to not have a map, and they like, you don't need it. But I think for a game that is like this designed and this cool, you almost just like your experience with that map you saw in the game, like, you kind of want something that's just like, wow, this world is big and there's all these interesting things. I kind of want to look at it all at one time instead of have to like
I feel like it's another thing they were like trying to get that seamless experience, which again is why I don't want dialogue in this game, because they're doing so many. They've gotten rid of so many things that feel like a game layer. Like there is a heads up interface. There's information available, but it's not like you can go to, other than the pause menu, it's not like you leave the game world for any reason. You don't die. You don't have a map. So why?
Yeah. And the game world is so small that like there's another. So I think all of this like is very intentionally designed in this way. Like, the game world is really small and tight, and you have this really excellent fast traversal system that is really fun to engage with. So they can leave out all of this stuff like a fast travel system or a map, and so that aspect all really works well for me. I still want that map though.
Yeah, well, we spent the whole first part of this episode sort of comparing this game to its lineage and the games made by the same company in the past. But when I was playing it, like, this really just felt way more like a 3D Zelda game than it felt anything like those previous games, right? And so I think they're
definitely scratches that itch.
I think they're trying to meld, like, what if there was a 3D Zelda game that didn't have all of the trappings of a Zelda game with, like, your 5 different potential weapons, and you're like, now I have this sword that I have to maintain, or all the different things, and like the 18 different maps and the compass and what if they strip all of that out and it's just the puzzles and just the exploration. And I mean, I think it works really, really well, but I think when you're playing it, you kind of have a game that has its feet in 2 different, worlds.
Yeah, sure. Feet in worlds, feet in pools. But
well, yeah, I don't know. Your feet are in 2 different things. And you find yourself wanting, the bodies talk. Okay, that's kind of a Zelda thing. Mm-hmm. I wish it was more like a Journey thing where, like, they don't tell me anything. They just float away, like you said. Oh, there's no map. That's more like a Journey thing. Well, I wish there was a map. It's more like a Zelda thing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting balance.
That said, I did find some of the adaptations really pleasing because you don't have any real powers other than, like, your movement. You can jump and you can, it's not like you can break a pot or drag a boulder over, but your bird can. And one of my funniest moments was I find a weight and you can call your bird over to pick up the weight, and my husband just goes, God, that bird is jacked.
I know.
It is a strong bird.
It is picking up like a giant person-sized weight, and it's just flying around with it. I was like, yeah,
tough bird.
I love my bird. Put my bird down. It also has as someone who played a couple of the games on Bird Weeks where you have pets and things to do and, like, you can pet your bird. It was interesting that, like, the clean your bird mechanic was like move the joystick to clean your bird, and I was like, I want this to feel better, but I get what they're doing.
The clean your bird thing was silly, but
Well, I wanted to be able to pet its head and wings, right?
Yeah,
I didn't want to just always have to pet for plot. I wanted to pet for fun.
You are allowed to pet for fun,
right? But it's the same, like, cleaning mechanic, and I can't. I wanted to, like, ruffle its feathers on its head or, like, have it react to you and.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I appreciate anything that allows me to, interact with my little animal companion. But they could maybe have done a little more with that. But I thought it was really cute. Nice to have. This day and age, developers are beginning to understand that if you have a dog or a bird and you don't have a way to play with it in your game, your players will feel like they aren't treating their pet as well as they could. So. Speaking of beasts in this game, I really would like to talk about the bosses, because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with the boss design.
This is one of the moments where if you have played Breath of the Wild, you will have some flashbacks, because they are kind of divine beastie.
They are. They're also kind of Shadow of the Colossus-y. But there's something that they're doing that I think is really interesting, and that is at first, when you enter an area, the boss is surrounded by an enormous ball of evil red energy or fire. And so occasionally you'll just be sitting around doing a puzzle, and you'll start to see kind of waves of heat or something kind of washing over you. And very menacingly. And oftentimes, like, this thing will, like, literally notice you and start to pursue you across the landscape at kind of a clip. And so you're being pursued by this truly gigantic red orb of energy. And if it catches up with you and you get kind of pulled into this enormous red cloud, then a very odd sequence will happen, which is a stealth sequence, where the boss arrives And as you're kind of pulled into this kind of red cursed energy, your bird gets covered in red cursed energy as well, and gets kind of chucked off somewhere, and then you're in this kind of alternate version of the environment where there's a lot of weird stuff shows up if you're looking around, like lots more dead people, including some of them that are like levitating and like in the process of like looking like they're frozen in the enactment of some kind of big battle or something. It's a very interesting look, and it's this kind of stark black and red full of ominous clouds. And your boss, the enemy, is quite large and is going to be looking for you and is going to be kind of teleporting around. So in these sequences, you have to get back to your bird without being seen. And if you're seen, then it kind of kicks you some distance away and you kind of have to start over, which is the pattern with these bosses. But you get the bird back, and then you can get out and kind of go back to whatever it was you were doing. I wasn't totally wild about these stealth sequences. They kind of frustrating certain times.
This felt like a hangover from Journey, because they had the like underwater scene where like the light the light is of the beam is where you can travel, and otherwise you can't. I've done, I did 2 or 3 of them, and I was like, okay, I get this, but I did like the preview of that feeling, because then when you actually fight him later, you get back in this world, but you're consciously entering it. So I did kind of like this as like a premonition of the world you're going to enter when you actually fight the boss.
Yeah. And actually, the thing I did really like about it is the feeling of being pursued across the landscape, because it gives you a reason to move.
I didn't realize until the second time that the big orb was moving. I thought it was going to be always centered until I got caught, and I thought I was in a completely different place, and it was surprising.
Mm-hmm.
That's
so
really cool.
that stuff's really neat. And then as you do the puzzles, you're collecting these little I don't know what you call those, tokens, whatever they are. And as
I was calling them like you got little gold bricks which turn into feathers, and you get stamps which then you clear the towers with.
Little bird stamps. I want to get one of these bird stamps.
Collect your bird stamps and deposit them. I was thinking of them as tokens, which you deposit into the like coin operated towers.
Yes.
So you get those.
It's weird. These towers have a mechanic, like the bad guys built into it. Like, we can corrupt them, but if someone plugs a little bird token into it, our corruption goes completely away. I don't know why they built that into the tower.
Maybe they are just the religious idols have been removed, because the goddess is Mother Eagle, and you're getting like eagle heads. So maybe it's like you're putting the cross back in the church to purify it. Like I think that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but that's good.
I didn't actually come up to that until just now. So
it's better
with
than
all
I
the
had.
text in this game. They did not provide an explanation for what it is that you're doing for like 80% of it.
But honestly, that doesn't matter. Like you're cleansing the temple by doing a thing. Like.
Yeah, so you are cleansing the curse on the towers. Yeah, and that's what works terrifically. And I love the tower thing. This is the kind of, I guess, Ubisoft style game thing that was then later copied by Breath of the Wild, and now everyone does it. Which is like you're claiming an area of terrain by taking over the tower. And in this case, you claim 3 towers, and then they shine down this holy, beautiful light, which fights off that kind of red, evil darkness. And then you go intentionally into the weird bubble of energy and fight the boss. And when you fight the boss, how would you describe the boss fights in this game?
So it's a multi-stage boss fight, which I really appreciate. You are the hunter, and the first stage of the boss fight is pursuing the beast. It's interesting that the boss, these menacing beasts that have been pursuing you the whole time, you are chasing it and trying to shoot it multiple times to get to the next mode. So basically you have to pursue it until you injure it enough for it to face you head on, which is a really interesting mechanic, because you have to be going pretty much at top speed to catch it, because it'll actually run away so fast that the bubble will leave if you don't catch it. So if you are not shooting enough arrows to keep up your speed and pressing that dash button continuously, hunting it down, it will run away from you far enough that you will have to basically start over. So the first stage, I'd say, is like the pursuit. And the second point is when it turns on you and you have a more traditional, like, multi-stage boss battle where you're actually trying to shoot it before it kills you. It doesn't kill you. It'll throw you far away and you have to restart, and you move slowly, and it's sad. But to me, it was really like, I enjoyed the fact that it felt like a continuous fight, and that anytime I had a setback, it didn't kill me. It just made me like feel like I needed to take a moment in the corner and then go back in and guns blazing. It made the boss fights feel more like, that felt more like a story than anything else in the game.
Yeah. I enjoyed the boss fights. I do. I don't know what the better alternative was, but when you have a boss fight that, when you screw up, just like kind of kicks you out of the arena, and then you have to go in and do the exact same thing again. That can be a little bit frustrating if you're running into kind of difficulty with it, which happened to me a couple of times. I had a few times where I was like, oh, come on, I can do this. And, you leap in, and then it's basically every boss fight had those two phases that you're talking about. First is the chase. And then the second is kind of a unique sequence of kind of combination of platforming and shooting challenges that kind of went along with it. But the look of these boss fights was really good. Like,
it looked awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, the pursuit is in this red environment, and you have to move so fast to catch up with the beast that it feels extremely cinematic. It feels really powerful. You feel like you are going on offense. It's funny, like, I haven't had that feeling of like I am the aggressor in like almost no boss fight. Do you feel like the aggressor? It almost feels like you are playing defense and attacking because they are so much bigger than you. In this case, it's like, no, I am chasing you down. I am going to take you out. And then, of course, they retaliate. And they're so fiery. There's so many different, it's a normal attack. 3 fireballs shoot at you, but the way they animate it is really spectacular.
And the way they're really cool looking too. Like the design of the bosses themselves. Like the bosses are these corrupted kind of divine creatures, right? And I don't think we need to get into like what all of them are and what they all look like and whatnot. But like, I think the first one, or maybe first or second one you get to, I'm not sure if there's a prescribed order, is a
elk.
It's like it's like an elk / bear creature, but it has like 6 legs and like a really creepy hunched posture and like one weird glowing eye, and it's just a very cool creature, and it, the whole thing is on fire. Yeah. It's very cool.
It turns into an elk, but it's as if the antlers are the legs. Like, that's what the corrupt version of it is. It's as if they took the antlers off the head and made it legs. And
I was thinking
really
like
disturbing looking.
And as you cleanse these things, they turn back into these beautiful blue kind of celestial critters. And so that's a very satisfying loop. I honestly think this game, like, I don't know how, if you had added like 2 or 3 more areas to the game, like, I don't know. How do you guys feel about, we're always here talking about the length of games. Like, how do you feel about the length and the amount of content in this game in terms of like, should it have more bosses, more of anything in particular? It's pretty good.
I think it felt right if they weren't going to do new mechanics in the boss fights, because I do think the choice not to have the ability to smash pots or do other things besides call your bird, and like the puzzle mechanic stays pretty interesting, but I think it would be limited. I think they went as far as they could with it. They'd have to add another layer if they wanted to make it longer, or they would just want to have like a different feeling sequence, because the boss fights this point didn't feel repetitive, but I feel like they could. If there were like more of them, I think I would have been like, okay, this thing again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess he could like, let's throw in a hub world and, let's get some other, get some upgradables and some unlockables and let's just lean in on the Zelda thing. No, I agree, Laura. I think the game feels dense, but it's also sparse enough that like you need to expand it for it to go any longer than it does already. And I think generally, like if you have decided to make your game pretty short, we're okay with that.
I feel like more of the stuff that they could have, like they do have like the Korok style time challenges where like you go into a wall of butterflies and then a little ticking timer shows up and you have to get to another area. There are those kind of challenges.
Game is all Korok challenges. Yeah.
Yeah. There are tons of little Korok challenges all around it that were in addition to the other puzzles. And I feel like that's how you flesh out this game. But if you just want to do the big puzzles, like generally if you go to any big building in this game, it's going to be a big puzzle. Like, some of the smaller buildings have like interesting stuff too. And it's fun to wander on the architecture. So if you liked that part of Journey, like the kind of slow crawl, if you're looking at all the art in Abzu, like that's fun to do in this game. I don't think adding more islands and bosses and towers is what I would want more of necessarily. Mm-hmm. Just because I don't think those puzzles they didn't wear out their welcome, but I feel like they would.
So what was it that you guys played this game on? Because I had a really good experience running it, but it didn't sound like that was universal for everybody. It didn't sound like it worked that well on everyone's hardware.
So I tried briefly opening it on my the iPad Air I have for work, and it kind of was like, it looked like it was going to be unhappy. And I also wanted to play it on my projector. So I ended up running it on my work laptop, which is a MacBook Pro, hooked up to HDMI to the projector. And it was on the absolute lowest settings. I actually even turned down the resolution because I had it on every low setting and the resolution appropriate to my projector. And I ended up turning it down 1 degree and restarting the game. And then the game at a lower resolution still looks pretty fantastic. Like some of the beautiful gods, I could see like little, scaly vector lines, but I knew I was constantly taking it out. That's on a tiny MacBook Pro, not built for gaming. Probably if I played this on a PlayStation, I would be fine. But I was surprised because I'd played Manifold Garden on that machine before and had no problems.
Mm-hmm.
Which also had problems with the iPad Air. So I know it has like the biggest list if you download this on an iPad or iPad Pro of things it just will flat out not run on. But I'll say like I consciously degraded my visual experience to have a more seamless time. And it was fine, but it was a compromise.
I had a similar experience, Laura. I was playing this game for a little while and I was looking around being like, man, this game feels like it's beautiful, but my current experience is like not, very blocky and chunky and like kind of laggy. And I'm playing on a 2020 MacBook Pro. Again, I know we're a gaming podcast and we're playing these games on like not great gaming hardware, but I would still expect a game on Apple Arcade to run pretty well on like the most modern Apple computer. And
they built this for PlayStation 5 and then backbait it for
you can tell. And so I tried to increase the graphics. I was like, man, I really want to see what this game can do.
And it chugged in that first cutscene. I turned up the graphics and then I immediately had to turn them off.
It crashed. I couldn't play it. I upgraded. I put I tried like 5 different iterations of like, okay, maybe I'll turn up the environment, but I'll leave everything else low. I'll turn up texture and I'll leave it, and nothing would work beyond the lowest setting on everything. And then even then, I didn't think it looked that great. Like I think if you can play this game on any of the consoles or on like an iPad Pro or something like that, I would absolutely recommend playing it there because it was still fun, and I definitely enjoyed and recommend this game. But I think if I were doing it again, and we weren't doing it like for the show where we have pretty quick turnaround time, like I would really have considered like just waiting until I had a PS5 or buying it at least on like PS4 and just assuming it would still play better than it did on my MacBook.
Yeah, and I think they do a pretty good job. Like if you have environment depth set to low, like when they are taking the graphical compromises, I think they do a really good job of like making the gameplay looks. It's funny. The gameplay feels better than the cutscenes because I think they really paid attention to if you need to take those settings down. The gameplay feels very good. It's just like when you get to a cutscene, you can tell they like compress the hell out of that file. Yeah. Which is funny. Like almost every game is the opposite. So I'll take it.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, I'm trying to like balance this because I know, we're both saying that we didn't play this on like the best gaming hardware. So like your mileage will vary, but it just seems like it's like if you want to play it on your computer, you're going to need like a gaming specific rig.
I've just seen like I have had games play spectacularly on my computer, so I was surprised.
Me too.
I've had gorgeous games play on my computer, so I was a little surprised.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I played it on the iPad Pro, and although it's not a great game for touch screens, I did have a controller, and it played really beautifully on the iPad Pro. So that's a good piece of hardware for it. I definitely agree with you guys because I tried playing it on my Mac, and it really, really did not run well there. So
yeah, it could be just that specifically. Like it's been optimized to run well on the newest tablets. Just not at all on even because my laptop is like brand new and of the higher end of the MacBook Pros, and it was like trash. So it is what it is.
They really did for my limited knowledge of Apple Arcade is they are asked to work on the newest devices on phone and tablet, and Mac is also on Macs, but it is like, please make it like it needs to look great on the iPad Pro in the Apple Store. Yeah, it needs to look great on the phone in the Apple Store. It does not need to work on the Mac.
They're required to run across all the Mac platforms, and I just struggle to imagine how an Apple TV could run this game.
It will not run. Like I can't imagine
no way.
An Apple TV.
I mean, theoretically, it's available for Apple TV. Yes, so.
Yes, it has to work on Apple TV.
If anyone out there has this on Apple TV, tell me please how horribly it runs.
Is it just polygons?
What even will it look like? Because this game, I mean, it's beautiful, but it is not like super intense in terms of polygons or
I think it's just the intensity that you move through the environment because you're moving at such speed through it. Like you're moving at Sonic speeds, and it needs.
I was about to say you're Sonic the Hedgehog around here.
Yeah, and so like but the thing is, you also need to be able to walk through that slowly. So like all the detail has to render again at 2 speeds. So it's not like they can cut corners because you're just going to be dashing your way through. So I get the problem. I completely relate to it. I just kind of wish it. It is always sad when you enter a beautiful game and then all of your settings say lowest. Like you just feel like, yeah,
so I don't have a PS5 yet. But I really think I'll probably get this game again whenever I get like a newer console, and I want to play this game like max out. Like I just think it would be such a better experience, and probably worth it.
We've been through multiple like console revisions and things like that with this podcast. Like 5 years ago was coming into the current console generation, and we've gone through an entire console generation, and we're now hitting a point where the tools that we've been using for a long time are not quite what they used to be when it comes to like a lot of these newer games. So I am definitely eyeing a gaming PC much harder than I have ever before.
Yeah, We that is something that I think we have talked about some on our Discord. All of us just starting to lean a little bit more towards like maybe it is time that like game, like at least if you're going to play it on a computer, like Mac is and Apple is like actively getting away from building computers that can handle this sort of stuff, and games are getting just so much more dense and and beautiful. So yeah, I agree.
It's a funny thing because that's not normally what I go to games for, but in games that are about the environment and the mood and the atmosphere, it's like I am a person who loves watching movies in very nice high resolution.
Yeah.
And, like, I have a projector screen so I can see them in their full glory. And like I when something is beautiful and large and in depth, like it feels different. So like it's not because I want to be able to have I am a weirdo who doesn't buy nice things for a AAA game, but I'm like the Pathless maybe, or like Ori is why I was like Ori the Blind Planet would look really good.
Well, yeah, totally. My favorite and almost the significant majority of my gaming at this point is on the Switch and handheld. So that right there should show like I don't generally care that much, but when you can just tell a game like this, it's like, man, I really think if I was playing this on a big screen that's running it at its, if not its
highest
best
quality,
but not even highest quality, but not bottom bin lowest. Like I just feel like it would make the experience so much better. And I was surprised.
To go from low to standard.
Yeah, right. I was surprised that I didn't have access to that even with a brand new computer.
Yeah, I was sad that I had to take my resolution down. But that said, like it did run very smooth. I had barely any load times, so that was all helpful.
Well, to conclude, we already mentioned for this game that it is available on a variety of different platforms, but that is, to summarize, Microsoft, Windows, PlayStation 4 and 5, and then the Mac and iOS devices through their Apple Arcade service. So this one coming to us from Giant Squid and Annapurna, two big names that drew me immediately into this game. So after we talk about games, one of our traditions on this podcast is to spend a little while talking about the great things that are going on in our lives outside of the world of gaming, in a little segment that we like to call What's Making Us Happy This Week. I have something that's been making me happy for the last few weeks that I would like to share with you all. And I don't know how much setup this really needs, but one of the problems in my media life right at the start of 2020 was the disillusion of my favorite food YouTube channel, and for good reason. The terrible the terrible revelation of bad practices taking place at Bon Appetit, who had a really fabulous YouTube channel for kind of just general kind of cooking and kind of fun videos. But it turns out
huge
it was
fan
run
of Claire
by,
and Claire's stuff over here. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Nate's mentioning Claire Saffitz, who is the personality behind Gourmet Makes, where they would make these gourmet versions of junk food or processed food. So they'd make a fancy gourmet Doritos and things like that. Well, one of the people who was actually my favorite, although she was almost never on camera, she was always the highlight of any video she would be in, was Sohla Alweli. And I was a big Sohla fan then, and she was kind of wrapped up in the one of the big points in the kind of call out of this channel was based around the fact that she was, in most of the videos she was clearly the most knowledgeable person and a delight to see
never
on screen, but never the star, and apparently wasn't being paid like the stars, even though she was truly the workhorse of and the genius of much of the channel and their content. So she has gone on during the pandemic to kind of do spots on a lot of other people's different channels, and they've all been really good. I've kind of continued to follow her to the kind of Binging with Babish channel, where she's doing some really interesting videos where they kind of put certain unusual challenges to her. But my favorite thing, and the thing that I want to tell you listeners to check out, is on a different channel, the channel I've never watched before. They have a website, I guess, Food 52, where she's doing these videos called Off Script with Sohla. And these videos are really, really good. They're exactly the kind of cooking video that I really, really like, which is videos that aren't about like, gimmicks or personalities, although, she's great as a personality. They're not even about recipes. They're about learning a like general rule of thumb guide to making something that you can really mix and match. That's kind of the name Off Script. So there have been 3 of these now, and each one of them have turned out really, really great. Like the first was making like a greens dish that like I've done so far with collard greens. And basically you take any greens, any pasta, and any kind of bean and follow the rough instructions in this video, and you're going to have a really cozy, hearty, delicious meal. And another one was chicken and rice that you can make basically any way you want, just following these instructions on, how to riff around the idea of chicken and rice. Here's all these different ways. And in the videos, she'll make it like 2, sometimes 3 different ways, but then give you lots more ideas. So I've been doing a lot more experimenting in the kitchen. It is really happy for me to see her landing on her feet, and it's really excellent to see the content that she's putting out here. It's really good stuff. So
I can't wait to watch these. We've watched all of the Stump Sohla series on the Benji
That sounds
Babish
great.
channel. And like, to be honest, this is how we've wanted to cook. Is you want to cook like a chef. You want to be able to see a bunch of ingredients and turn it into dinner. That seems very exciting.
Mm-hmm. And it's all
Sohla
one
is
pot
so
stuff
charming.
is another thing that's super good about it.
That's the dream. In a studio kitchen, one pot stuff is
Mm-hmm.
essential.
Yeah, you're going to love these videos.
Wonderful. Nate, what's been making you happy?
Yeah, so Molly and I, we will definitely go in phases where we like watch a ton of TV and then we won't watch anything for like months. So we're in that cycle of watching a bunch of TV right now, and we've been watching a lot of the stuff that everyone else is watching, and some of it's already been talked about on this show. Things like The Great was awesome, and then obviously like uber popular Mandalorian and whatnot. We've been enjoying that. But one show that we watched recently that I have not heard talked about as much that I wanted to recommend is called Truth Seekers. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It is made by Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. So
really?
if you're a fan of those two, then you will enjoy this show. And I didn't even really know that it existed, despite being a pretty big fan of those two. So it follows Nick Frost, and a couple other characters are Wi-Fi installers in England, and also are that run a YouTube channel about as paranormal investigators. And they start to uncover some things, and the show starts out relatively sort of serialized, like here are these characters and or formulaic, like these characters, oh, here's a paranormal thing, let's figure it out, solve it, and move on. Over its 8 episodes, it becomes much bigger, and by the end, it's a awesome coming together of like 9 different storylines. It's really, it gets better and better. When we first started watching it, I thought it was fine. I mean, I'll watch anything that those two do, and I'll enjoy it. But it starts out, it's kind of weird. It doesn't really, it's like part comedy, part like paranormal. So it like kind of blends the two. And sometimes it's not as funny as you'd like it to be, and sometimes it's not as like spooky as you'd like it to be. But it works when you get through all of it. So I definitely recommend watching it. particularly if you're a fan of those two. But even if you're not, like, I think it works and it's worth watching. So it's called Truth Seekers. It's only 8 episodes, and it's great. So check it out.
That does look super fun. I love those guys.
Yeah,
How did I miss this? I didn't know about it.
It could be.
I never knew this existed.
Same, right? So that's why I wanted to talk about it here. So, my bar for those two is pretty low, but I really think that this is worth your time and worth watching, especially if you're just into, like, spooky paranormal stuff. It was good to watch. I think we were watching it more back in, like, early November around, like, Halloween and whatnot. So it kind of fit that whole vibe, but check it out. It's good. Oh, also Malcolm McDowell is in it. So which
okay,
yeah,
I love that.
You had me at hello, Nate.
Yeah,
yeah, right. So that's a great other casting. So check it out. Laura, how about yourself?
I'm also going to recommend a TV show that I didn't realize how much I was going to love it. So Netflix has a really bad habit of having original series come up and then not recommending them to me, even though they are tailor-made for me. And that is what happened with Teenage Bounty Hunters. Stay with me. Because I thought Teenage Bounty Hunters...
You don't have to worry about it. That title alone has me with you. So
someone said, hey, if you're a fan of season 1 Veronica Mars, but not the dramatic parts, you should watch Teenage Bounty Hunters. And I was like, what is this? So the premise is there are 2 twin girls who are go to a private high school, a religious high school in Atlanta. And at the beginning of the movie, or the beginning of the TV show, it's a TV show, one of the girls is losing her virginity to her boyfriend while quoting the Bible because they're supposed to be saving each other for marriage. And I was like, interesting take. Like, including the Lord is my shepherd, thou shalt not want. And you're like, because she's trying to convince him to have sex with her, even though they promise to save themselves for marriage. So the next scene, they're driving their dad's car and she's talking to her twin sister and tells her, and they're so distracted by this conversation that they hit another car. Turns out that guy was on the lam and they've nailed the bounty hunters. And they coincidentally have all the skills because one is an excellent shot because her dad's taking her hunting. The other one is a lacrosse player. So these 2 twin girls end up being the assistants to Bowser, an older black man who runs a yogurt shop with the bounty hunting office in the back. So this is a show where they took literally every attribute they could think of and gave it to their lead characters in a good way. Like, there is a show where the mean bad character, April, has the line, I'm not a fan of sex workers, but they deserve to be safe, just not allowed to vote.
Okay.
Because she's and she's supposed to be one of the, like, super conservative people, where there's a scene where they go into a strip club and they keep being like, yes, your bodies are dimples. This is glorious. And it's not it's one of, like, what if they were Christian, but they were both extremely woke and feminist, and there's jokes where the mother, they're having dinner or brunch with their conservative grandparents, and they're like, for this brunch, climate change is not real. That kind of joke. But it's not as heavy-handed as I might make it sound, because with all of this, like, Christian right jokes, the girls are really sweet. They're very loving. They're very protective of each other. All of the cases they go on are interesting and funny and smart. I feel like this is, like, the joke density of the show is extremely high. And I was not expecting it. This is way too interesting a show for Netflix. Apparently they were like, oh, it's COVID, so we're just canceling stuff. But the people who've seen it seem to be rabid fans. So I'm hoping that they might lift that in the future.
Well, Laura, I know I can always count on you to recommend some good, horny, funny shit. And that sounds
That's exactly what it is. Like, this is like sex education. It's like never ever. It's like funny, horny teens, but these are different kinds of funny, horny teens. Yeah. And they just want to, run a bounty hunting thing out of a yogurt shop so they can repair their dad's truck.
Sounds great. Well, I love Veronica Mars, so you had me with that recommendation. But sounds ridiculous and worth checking out.
Mhm.
Yeah, it completely passed me by, and it made me very happy this week.
Nice.
Already canceled, though. Sad.
Well,
Already canceled, but honestly, I think there's hope for this. A lot of things got
yeah.
canceled in COVID because it costs like 200% more to shoot stuff during COVID.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the showrunner has a second season outlined, so I think it doesn't seem like an expensive show. It feels like one that might actually get picked up.
Well, I'd like to just say thanks to you both once again for joining me again on this fine podcast. Thanks to the not present Reagan for being the founding creator of the podcast and the guy who's going to have to edit this mess. So thank you, Reagan.
We very much appreciate that.
But even more so, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, it would be much more difficult for us to make this podcast. Your contributions really make it possible. And it's also with the help of those patrons that we're able to plan and execute this podcast through our Discord, where we talk about episode ideas, ask for questions, talk about upcoming games, and just sort of generally figure this thing out.
Or like last episode, we bring them on as guests. You know, we've had multiple people from the Discord end up being on our show. So
Absolutely.
Get in there, get in the Discord. We'd love to
Get in the zone. The fun
It's such
zone,
a
we
nice
call it.
place to hang out.
It
It is a
is.
very. I love our
Let's be
Discord.
real.
Yeah, I love our Discord. It's so nice.
We also love to get game recommendations just from anybody who's willing to throw it into our contact form on our website. Our site is theshortgame.net, where you can find our entire back catalog and search through it and find those sweet game recos. You can find the show on Twitter @_shortgame. I can also be found on Twitter @8bitshane. Nate, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @NateSTL.
And Laura, where can people locate you?
You can find me on Twitter @Laura J. Nash.
Thanks, and have a nice week.